My wife's alpha boss slid his hand under her skirt and said, "Go away, she's mine now. Face me man to man." 10 minutes later, he couldn't walk, stand up, or even speak. I had arranged a lunch, thinking it would be a break from the routine. Instead, I witnessed an overconfident man who, with a single gesture, tried to steal my wife's dignity and discovered he wouldn't get away with it. The lunch that should have been ordinary. I remember that day with too much clarity to ever forget. My wife had finally agreed to meet me for lunch near her office. She had been working late, frequently exhausted, trying to please a boss who demanded too much. She brushed it off. She said that's just how corporate life was, but I knew something was bothering her. So, I thought maybe a lunch would help. Just the two of us, no deadlines, no stress, a chance to remind her that outside of office politics and promotions, she still had someone who loved her unconditionally. We met at a quiet bistro downtown, the sunlight filtering through the large glass windows. She smiled when she saw me, but it was a tired smile. I reached my hand across the table, touched hers, and we laughed for a few moments about how awful my tie was. For 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. Calm, safe. Then he arrived. Sebastian Driel, her boss, the kind of man who acts like he owns every room he walks into. Expensive watch, impeccable hair, that predatory smile that made your skin crawl. He didn't notice me at first. He noticed her. His eyes locked on her as if she were an object he had already purchased. The atmosphere changed instantly. She stiffened, her fork trembling slightly in her hand. I leaned closer and whispered, "What's wrong?" She shook her head. "Nothing, just eat." But I knew. I turned and saw him walking towards us. He didn't hesitate, didn't respect boundaries. He pulled a chair up to our table as if it belonged to him by right. "Kevin," he said in a soft, almost mocking voice. I didn't know this was a family lunch. I didn't like the way he said my name, as if I were disposable. My wife tried to intervene. "Sebastian, we're in the middle of," but before she could finish, his hand slid onto her shoulder, and then, in a single motion, he leaned closer and let his hand travel down her side, his fingers slipping beneath the hem of her skirt. "Go away," he said, smirking with a cruel arrogance. "She's mine now. Or face me man to man." The noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away. Not the clinking of silverware, not the conversations, just the sound of my heart pounding and my wife's sharp intake of breath as she pushed his hand away. The way he laughed as if he owned her, as if I were just an obstacle to be removed, ignited something inside me I didn't even know existed. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. My wife's eyes widened, a flash of fear in them, not fear of him, but of what I might do. And in that instant, I realized something. This wasn't just a man crossing a line. It was a predator who thought he could humiliate me, humiliate her, and walk away unscathed. He had no idea what was coming for him. Outside, the air between us grew heavy. My wife's face was pale, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say no but couldn't form the words. Sebastian sketched a smile, dismissing her push as if it were a joke. "Relax, darling," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Your husband knows how this works. Men like him always step aside when real men show up." The restaurant fell silent. People were watching. Some held their phones half-raised, anticipating the drama. I leaned forward, my voice firm. "Take your hand off her and leave." He laughed. "Or what? You'll sue me? Write a strongly worded letter?" "No, Kevin. If you want to prove something, let's go outside. Man to man." He wanted an audience. He wanted to humiliate me in public, but the truth is, he had already crossed the line the second he touched her. There was no going back. I felt it once. Then, my wife grabbed my arm. "Kevin, please, don't." I looked at her, then at him. "I have to. We stepped out into the cold afternoon air. The restaurant crowd pressed against the windows. A few brave ones followed us onto the sidewalk, phones recording. Sebastian loosened his tie like it was a performance, rolling his shoulders theatrically. "Last chance," he said with a dismissive smirk. "Either you leave her, or I take her from you right here." That was it. The spark that lit the powder keg. He swung first, a wild punch, expecting me to back down, but arrogance makes men sloppy. I blocked, pivoted, and sank my fist into his ribs. The crack was clear, dry. He staggered back, eyes wide, the smirk fading into what I had been waiting to see all along. Fear. "Still want to play the alpha?" I snarled. He tried another, slower punch. This time I ducked under it, grabbed his arm, and twisted it hard until his shoulder popped. The scream he let out cut through the air and drew gasps from the crowd. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes of strikes, holds, and calculated rage until Sebastian was done. Mr. Untouchable, Mr. Power, lay on the asphalt. He couldn't get up, couldn't walk. His voice cracked when he tried to curse at me, but only a broken whimper came out. The crowd filmed everything. Every arrogant taunt, every desperate stumble, every bone giving way under the weight of his own arrogance. My wife stood motionless, tears in her eyes. Not from fear, but from relief. I stood over him, my chest heaving. "Touch her again," I said coldly, "and you'll lose more than bones." Then I went back inside, leaving him writhing in the gutter with his reputation destroyed and his body broken. The police arrived faster than I expected. Sebastian was crumpled on the pavement, holding his arm, his face contorted with rage and pain. A few bystanders were already giving statements to the officers, holding out their phones, replaying the recordings they had just made. "Sir, step away," one of the officers ordered. His hand was near his holster. I raised my palms slowly. I was defending my wife. "Check the cameras behind me." My wife's voice trembled. He put his hands on me in the restaurant. Everyone saw it. The cops exchanged a look. This wasn't going to be a he said, she said case, not with half the restaurant as witnesses and security footage waiting inside. The hostess came out, pointing at Sebastian. "He groped her," she said, right in front of her husband. I asked him to stop. A man in glasses added, he challenged him. Said, "Go away, she's mine now." I heard it clearly. The officers scribbled notes, their pens flying across their pads. One of them muttered, "Sounds like assault and battery." For the first time, I saw Sebastian's arrogance crack and give way to desperation. He tried to speak, but the words came out garbled and pathetic. He claimed he was attacked without provocation, but no one believed him. Not with the witnesses lined up and the cameras still rolling. They took me in for further questions. "Standard procedure," they said. My wife came with me, her hand trembling the whole way. At the station, Detective Monroe put a laptop on the table and played the bistro's footage. There it was, the hand sliding up her thigh, the sneer on his face, the challenge, and then me standing up, fists clenched as the storm broke. Monroe snapped the laptop shut. "It's pretty clear to me. You protected your wife. We'll write the report accordingly. But understand, he's powerful, and powerful men fight back. Be ready." I nodded, my jaw tight. I had been ready from the moment he touched her. News travels faster than fire when there's blood in the air. By the time we left the station, clips of the fight had already gone viral. Hashtags like AlphaBoss beaten and Stand With Her were trending on social media. Employees from his company started leaking stories, emails, complaints buried under the rug, whispered rumors that were suddenly screaming in the light of day, of women harassed at parties, assistants touched for too long, meetings that ended with threats if they didn't cooperate. The company issued a cold statement: "We take these allegations seriously and have launched an internal investigation." But it was too late, the internet had already passed its verdict. 3 nights later, I got a call from my lawyer. They want to settle, he said, almost laughing. Civil suit. Hush money. The whole package. His team knows if this goes to trial, more skeletons will come out of the closet. And believe me, he can't afford any more broken bones, figuratively or literally. Pressing the phone to my ear, I leaned back in my chair. Say no, I replied. We don't want silence. We want the truth to come out. My wife, listening beside me, finally smiled through her tears. It wasn't a smile of relief, it was the smile of a woman watching a monster fall. Sebastian Driel thought he was untouchable. That day on the sidewalk, I broke his bones, but now, the world was breaking his legacy. The trial. Sebastian Driel's lawyers stormed the scene, wearing suits that cost more than most people's annual salary. Impeccably shined shoes, voices as smooth as honey. They painted me as a violent husband who lost control in public, but every time they spoke, the truth cut through their rehearsed performance. The prosecution showed the restaurant footage on a massive screen in the courtroom. The jury leaned forward, watching in silence as Sebastian's hand slid under my wife's skirt. Her gasp, the push, his dismissive smirk, the words, "Go away, she's mine now." Man to man. The room was still. Even the judge shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The hostess testified first. He touched her. I told him to stop. Everyone saw it. The man with the glasses followed. He provoked the fight. He said she was his. I've never seen anything like it. Each voice was another nail in the coffin of his defense. When 3 other patrons confirmed the same details, Sebastian's lawyers looked like they were drowning. But the real blow came when the company's internal investigation documents were admitted. Multiple complaints, HR records marked as resolved informally, assistants describing groping, cornered meetings, veiled threats. One woman, with tears in her eyes, whispered in her testimony, "I didn't think anyone would believe me until I saw the video." The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The jury wasn't just seeing an arrogant man, they were seeing a predator who had been covered for years. When it was Sebastian's turn to speak, he tried to resurrect his confident posture. He talked about misunderstandings, friendly gestures misinterpreted. But then the prosecution played the cell phone recordings from the bystanders. His tone, the arrogance, the words, "Go away, she's mine now," echoed through the courtroom again. Whatever confidence he had left crumbled. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty of sexual battery, guilty of assault. And while the court didn't give me a medal, the charges against me for excessive force were dropped. The judge's final words still ring in my mind. "Mr. Driel, the law is not your shield for predation. Actions have consequences. Today, you face yours." My wife cried softly on my shoulder. Across the aisle, Sebastian's once proud figure withered. His empire of intimidation collapsed on that single word, guilty. And for the first time, I saw him as he truly was, not an alpha, not a boss, but a coward laid bare for the world to see. Sebastian Driel thought he could break me in public, instead, the world broke him. The fall. Sebastian Driel's fall wasn't a stumble, it was a free fall with no bottom in sight. The day after the verdict, his company issued a statement, effective immediately, "Mr. Driel has been terminated. We do not tolerate misconduct." But everyone knew the truth. They had tolerated it for years until he became a liability too big to hide. First, it was the job, then the reputation. Corporate sponsors pulled contracts. His speaking engagements were cancelled. The glossy magazine that once put his face on the cover ran a follow-up piece, From Alpha to Pariah, The Rise and Fall of Sebastian Driel. Investors abandoned him. Colleagues who once kissed his feet now denied knowing him. And the civil suits began to pour in. One after another, women who had been silent for years found the courage to speak up. Our lawsuit had broken the dam, and now the flood was coming through. The court ordered him to pay my wife damages. It wasn't just money, it was acknowledgement. An official stamp that said, yes, this happened. Yes, it was wrong. But our case was just the beginning. Each new lawsuit drained his accounts. The offshore assets he thought were untouchable were frozen under investigation. The man who once boasted about his penthouse, his imported car, his bespoke suits, was forced to sell it all to cover the mounting legal fees. By the end of the year, he was no longer living in luxury. He was renting a one-bedroom apartment, dodging reporters, hiding behind sunglasses like a cornered animal. But perhaps the deepest wound wasn't financial, it was social. The same men who once called him an alpha now laughed behind his back. The women he had preyed on, finally free from fear, stood tall while he shrank into the shadows. His name became poison. No one wanted to be seen with him. No one wanted to risk the stain of association. The world he once controlled had turned its back on him. My wife and I weathered the afterstorm with quiet dignity. It was no longer about revenge, it was about healing. The nightmares lessened. The tremor in her hands faded away. She started to smile again, real smiles, the kind that crinkle the eyes and light up a room. One night, she said softly, "You didn't just protect me that day. You gave me my voice back." And in that moment, I realized the real victory wasn't breaking his bones, it was breaking the illusion of his power. Sebastian Driel once told me, "She's mine now." But now, the truth was undeniable. She was never his to take, and the only thing that truly belonged to him was his ruin. Months passed, the noise of the trial and the headlines fading into the background of the city's endless news cycle. New scandals took their place, but for us, life slowly found a new rhythm. My wife no longer walked into the office carrying the weight of fear. The name Sebastian Driel, once a daily reminder of intimidation, became just a bitter memory, whispered in HR archives and buried in old newspaper clippings. She was transferred to another department, this time under a manager who respected her talent instead of exploiting her vulnerability. Watching her flourish again, seeing her come home with laughter instead of tears, that was the sweetest victory. I didn't walk away unscathed. The fight left marks on not just in the ache in my hands or the wariness in my step, but in the understanding of how fragile dignity can be. Sometimes people would stop me in the grocery store, at the gas station. "I saw what you did," they'd whisper, "Good on you." But it wasn't pride that stayed with me, it was clarity. I hadn't just stood up to a man, I had stood up to a predator who believed no one would ever stop him. And in doing so, I realized there comes a point where silence becomes complicity. I heard fragments of his downfall through the grapevine. The lawsuits piled up, his fortune crumbled. Former allies refused to testify on his behalf. His voice, once a command, was absent from every boardroom, every conference, every stage. The man who declared himself an alpha now existed only in whispers of pity. His roar had been reduced to silence. One night, in front of the fireplace, my wife asked me, "Do you regret destroying him like that?" I thought long and hard. Then I shook my head. "I don't regret protecting you," I answered, "and I don't regret ending the illusion that he could take whatever he wanted. Sometimes, people like him only learn when they're forced to feel powerless." She laid her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Then you taught him." In the end, it wasn't the broken bones that mattered. It was the broken cycle, the end of his reign of intimidation. He would never harass a woman in a restaurant again. He would never walk away from accountability with a sneer. That was the real revenge. And holding my wife's hand, warm and steady in mine, I understood something deeper. Justice doesn't always come from the courts, sometimes, it starts the moment you decide you've had enough. They say revenge is empty, that destroying someone only leaves a hole in you. But they don't talk about the kind of revenge born not of rage, but of necessity, of love, of dignity, of survival. Sebastian Driel believed he was untouchable. He thought money, status, and arrogance made him a god. He believed my wife was just another possession he could claim and I was just another man too afraid to fight back. But in 10 minutes, he learned the lesson he'd avoided his entire life. Power without respect is paper thin, one punch, one crack, and it all comes crashing down. He lost everything. His career, his fortune, his reputation. The name that was once a symbol of intimidation became a cautionary tale, don't end up like him. He thought he broke women. He thought he broke men with fear. But in the end, it was his own arrogance that broke him. We won more than peace. We won freedom. My wife no longer walks with her shoulders hunched, no longer flinches at shadows. She laughs again, dreams again, owned by no one. And I wear the memory of that day like a scar, but not one I regret. It reminds me that love isn't just flowers and promises. It's also standing up when someone tries to tear your family, your dignity, your humanity away from you. Revenge isn't always violence, sometimes it's taking the thing your enemy values most and showing them they never deserved it. For Sebastian, that was power. For us, it was freedom. And while his bones may have healed, his reputation never did. In the end, I didn't just break a man, I broke the illusion that he could ever own us. And that is a victory no one can ever take away. Reddit comment, in the end, the alpha became just another YouTube cringe video. Sebastian wanted power, respect, and control. He got lawsuits, debt, and laughed at. From untouchable to disposable. Congrats, champ. Yeah.